Hi guys, welcome to DTTV with Sim. Today we're going to look at rendering one of your products. So here we've got Legoman, which we've already assembled in the earlier tutorial. Now we're going to start adding colour to him and putting him into a scene. We're also going to look at playing with possibly the cameras and lighting as well. First of all, we're going to look on this side and we have the appearances, scene and decals. We can click on that and then we've got this basic three-part menu. We're going to look at appearances and scenes today. So, first of all, appearances. If I click on the plus, I can go to high gloss and then we've got a range of options. I'm thinking about his head at the moment, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop that on. Now, you'll notice that when I click on different aspects or roll over different aspects, different parts of the head are coloured. So for instance, for the face, it's just the simple face that I've clicked on. The revolve is the whole revolve. You'll notice that the eyes, as they're not part of that revolve, are not included. The body, which is the whole thing. The head revolve, again, which is the thing, or the assembly. So as you can see, some of these don't actually change very much, depending on what they are. It depends on how complicated your part is or how many aspects there are to it. I'm going to choose the revolve, because that's the piece that I want to do. I'm going to go back to my menu, and then I'm going to find myself a nice black, and I'm going to drop that onto his eyes. And for that I'm going to do, there's different options. I can either do the face, which if you could see past the menu here, would show you that it was just that one eye. The revolve cut, because that's how it's produced, will do the whole face. I could do the body because it's a single part as well. And you'll notice that I could also then do the assembly, which is both the eyes and the head, but that will obviously overwrite the yellow for the skin, which we don't want to do. So I'm just going to use the cut revolve. So without clicking, I'm just moving across the different options and picking the one that is the most appropriate and colours the parts I wish to colour. So now the hands again, drag, drop them on. I want to do the whole part. Now you'll notice that because the hand is linked to the other hand, I can do the whole part, and because the parts are the same, do both at once. Let's go for some blue trousers. The left legs and the right legs are separate. Didn't click anything then, so it didn't work. So drop that on. Right leg. Legoman quite often have the same colour trousers throughout, so I'm going to go for that. Then let's go for his top, and I am going to give him a grey arm. And a grey arm. And I'm going to pop him in with a cream top. Okay, at this stage you can see we've got a shadow underneath and Legoman's there. We could also then think about how he's posed. Now you'll notice that I'm unable to move certain components. Now if you think back to what we've done, we've actually linked a variety of components when we were doing the mating of this. So what I'm going to do, go back into our mates, and I'm going to find the ones that I no longer want. I'm happy with these leg mates. So the hand mate, I want to be able to move the hands independently, so I'm going to right click on that and delete it. Say yes. Nothing moves immediately, but it means that they can now freely rotate. I also need to find the legs, because if you remember we made the legs parallel. So I'm going to delete that. Say yes. And we also linked the back of the legs. Or maybe I removed that. So let's just try the move component. Yep, okay. So let's pop them in to a walking stance. Lovely. Right. Okay. At this stage, I could screenshot the page and pop it in, but really what we want to do is we want to make him look like he's in a scene. So I'm going to go into here. Now obviously for the purposes of this tutorial I can pick absolutely anything I want. You'll obviously pick things which are more appropriate to what you're doing. So we've got basic scenes. These are generally just kind of fairly bland scenes which have got different colours and different aspects, different reflections in them. Studio scenes, again, more reflections. Some of them are pretty horrible when you use them, so traffic lights and stuff like that give a very gaudy scene. There's also presentation scenes, and they come in groups. So let's go for landscape, and I'm going to chuck him into that one. So click a plus in the background, and I've popped Legoman into an environment. Okay, what we're going to do is we're now going to click on the Office Products tab. It's not one you've probably clicked before. Within there, there's Photo View 360, so we'll click that one. Now, for those of you who are paying attention, you'll notice that this aspect here has now popped up. It's one that's easily missed, and one that we need to make sure is in place. Going into the rendering tools, we've then got different options. We have the Edit Appearance. Now, this is a more complex version of the scene you've already seen, and also has advanced options available to you as well, including illumination, surface finish, mapping, and various other aspects. We're just going to stick on basic for the moment. That's if we wanted to edit certain components, so I could change the colour of his top, his trousers, etc, etc. We could also edit the scene. Within this, we can move things like the floor offset, which is this arrow here. So if your model was disappearing into the floor or was hovering above it, you could play with that. Often that depends on how you've actually drawn your model. Again, we can also rotate the environment around the model, etc, etc. What we're going to look at now, though, is a final render. I'm going to click on Final Render, and it tells me here ways of making the perspective look better. The easiest one is actually View, Display, and Perspective. It's now going to go through to doing the rendering. I'm just going to close that. Up here, into View, and then we're going to go down to our Display and Perspective. So I've made a few adjustments to the screen. Because I'm using a dual display here, what I've done is I've moved the preview version onto the bottom left hand corner here. I've put Legoman in a slightly more exciting position, and I've changed his colours around just because they're going to look nicer. What I need to do now is I need to consider how my lighting is set up. As we've talked about, this is a very dark scene. We've got no real lighting on Legoman himself. If I click into here, we've got a variety of different options. The default is this one, which shows just the colours that are put on Legoman, the decals, which we haven't used, and then lights and scenes. If we click in the scenes, we can play with various different aspects. You will notice that the lights are currently grey, and that's important in terms of Photo View 360. So if I click on to here, I can go, so that's a right click, go Show Lights. I'm going to zoom out slightly, and you can see how the lights are sitting around and actually pointing behind Legoman at the moment. If I click on Directional 1, you'll notice that this bit goes blue, so I can see it's the light that I'm referring to, and I can right click, and then I can have a variety of different options. One of them is to edit the lights, so I'm going to edit the directional light. What this allows me to do is allows me to move it, and allows me to move it in front of Legoman, and you can see the point where it's actually going to intersect with him. I can turn the brightness up of that light, like this, but you'll notice this hasn't changed yet. The reason for that is we need to go into Photo View 360 and go on in Photo View. And as you can see, straight away it brightens up. If I move him closer to the camera, because obviously this is what we're going to see, you can see there's more brightness. We can now brighten this here, and you can see we've gotten quite a dynamic view compared to the previous aspect. Lighting is really important when you're playing with any 3D model, as are the shadows. So you've got options here to play with the shadows here. With our current camera view, we've got some small shadows arriving on him here, and I can either play with those in terms of changing the angle of them and the amount of softness, and equally the shadow quality. Both of them will play with the end results, and you'll get a sort of fuzzier, softer shadow should you play with it. So we've got some quite strong lighting on him in one direction here, so I'm going to green tick that one. You'll notice now that direction 1 is on, so that's the golden light here. If I click on here, I can say on in Photo View 360, and you'll notice it gives a softer light because now we've added an additional light source to this. If I zoom out, we can see it's this light here. I can right click on there, and then I can edit directional light, and I can move that around, which will give us different effects and it will also allow us to point it in different directions. And again, I can change the brightness of that. I mean, I could have two very bright lights, one behind him, one in front of him. And if I zoom in now, see the preview, he is considerably more brightly lit. So I'm actually going to turn that down slightly. Zoom out slightly to put him back where I want him. It's too bright for me in one direction. So we've got a couple of shadows now, and we've got Legoman. I'm going to green tick that. There's a third directional light, and equally within lights I could add extra spots. I can also add sunlight, all of which are options that you may choose to play with and have a little experiment. You will need to zoom in and out of your image, particularly seeing as Legoman is so small, to find the lights on certain occasions. If I now click Final Render, drag over the scene, and Legoman will now be rendered, and you'll see that there's a good amount of reflection, good amount of light, and we can actually see what's going on. Arguably there's too many reflections on his face, and that's something that we'd need to deal with. At this stage we can save the product, or save the image, and we have an option here to save image, and you can save it as you wish. For instance, we could save JPEG, or we could go for other options. JPEGs are generally standard and ones which we'll use in your PowerPoint files quite nicely. So have a play, save some images, and then you'll be asked to present those as a small PowerPoint display to go along with the work you're doing to prove the work you've done. Okay, so that's rendering in its basic formats. There's a lot to this, so my suggestion is that you play with it, have a look at image processing and all sorts of other aspects, and there are other tutorials available on the internet. Okay, good luck with it. You've been watching DTTV with Sim.